or study? Oh my goodness, there were no hands. That blew. Oh, wait, I see those hands. I see those hands. Thank you. Thank you for helping with my social experiment. It's always good when someone validates your illustration. It's super helpful. But isn't it true? We often meet somebody for the first time, or we connect in, and it's like, oh, what do you do? What do you do for work? What do you do for a job? Because we want to find out about somebody. And it's one of those first questions that we invariably ask. I totally do it when I meet someone, and I'm, totally guilty as charged. And because I'm really interested in what people do. How do they fill up their week? What do they love? And human nature is to either rightly or wrongly then join the dots and make assumptions about a person. I assume if somebody says, I'm an accountant, they really like numbers and order and details and things that I do not like and flourish in. I assume that somebody that works with kids, they're caring and they're fun and they like short people. I assume that if someone's a builder, they're really practical and they can build stuff, which is super important when stuff goes wrong at your house and you're like, I need someone to build something. But essentially, the bigger question behind what do you do is, who are you? What are you living for? What's important to you? What is your purpose? We're in this space and time, though, when it's really easy to enmesh what we do with who we are. Our identity can be wrapped up in our job. We are more than what we do, but what we do is a really vital part of who we are. Think about it. We have 168 hours in a week. If we're really blessed, we're going to sleep about 56 of them. And then, we might spend, because we live in Auckland, about 15 hours driving to and from work and activities and things like that. And then there's showering and walking the dog and petting the cat, because we're an equal opportunity church here. Hey, look, you're sitting here, you're just quiet in the cheap seats. We're spending time with our loved ones, we're watching Netflix, we're doom scrolling and all of those things, maybe doing some cleaning, baking some bread and all of that. And on average, we may spend about 40 hours a week at work, which is a huge amount of time when you think about it. It's our second biggest block of time that we spend doing sort of a singular activity. So it makes sense that what we do is a really important part of our identity and our life. So you can see why work is important, and being in the right job or career makes all the difference to our overall sense of well-being and satisfaction. But does God have a purpose for my day job? Is there such a thing as being called to secular work? Does God call pilots, policemen, physiotherapists, politicians? And so this morning we're asking the big question, has God called me? And the answer is yes. This is not a trick question. The answer is yes. Each of us have a unique purpose that God has given us. And what does our mission field look like? I loved what Julie said, that her mission field had come to her. What has God called us to do, and how are we living that out? In my brain, I have always put calling into two categories. The first is the general call of all believers. And I hesitate to use that word general because it makes it sound small. It's like general. It's just like what we all do. It's just like whatever. And can minimalize the urgency and the importance and the individualness of this call to go and make disciples. It's not the job of special people with a special calling. It's the job and responsibility and the privilege of every single one of us who have experienced that reality and grace of God. If we believe in Jesus and say he's our Lord and our Savior, then this call is for all of us. And there's no opt-out clause. It's not just for special people. It's not just for extroverts. It's not just for people who like to talk. We are all called to go out into the world and make disciples. We're called to know God and to make him know him. And then there's like a personal call, which defines what our world looks like, the world we're going in to make disciples, what our world looks like, and how we can make a real difference in it. It's the unique, tailor-made, designed with you in mind, on purpose, with a purpose that God has for each one of us. And again, it's not just for special people and special jobs, but for every single one of us. Identity and calling isn't something we create, but something we receive from our Creator. It's not something we make up, but it's something that we discover as we follow Jesus. But somehow as Christians, we really flipped the script on God and said, you're only called if you're in full-time ministry. You only have a purpose if you're a pastor. You only matter if you're a missionary. I have a test that we can all do right now that will 100% guaranteed tell us if we're called or not. What I want you to do is take your two fingers like this. Let's see all those two fingers. Now what I want you to do, this is 100% guaranteed to tell you if you're called with your two fingers. Just do this. Hopefully you all had a pulse right then. Are you breathing? Guess what? You passed the test. You're 100% called. Guaranteed, you are called. We have narrowed that personal call down to one small part of God's big world. And we've said that a real call means you're called to leave your nets, your jobs, your families, to leave everything and follow Jesus, and you're going to be a pastor or a preacher or a missionary. And that very small box, that's what a real call is. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that the only calling there is ministry. Nowhere in the Bible does it discriminate between what we say is spiritual and secular. And nowhere does God think like that or put calling into a box with any limitations on how and where and through who he can move through. So what I want to do, though, is start by looking at the call of disciples, because it gives us an insight, even though we are living 2,000 years later, as to what our call is, both the general call and the personal, unique calling to make a difference in our world. In Matthew 4, we read about Jesus calling some of his first disciples. Matthew 4:18 says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. Immediately they left their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. In Matthew 9, just a few chapters ahead, we read about Jesus calling Matthew. Matthew 9:9 says, as Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Come, follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. Come, follow me. We think that conversation that Jesus had with Peter and with Andrew and with Matthew and James and John was like a unique personal phrase, but this is actually scripted, coded language in the Jewish culture. Come follow me is what rabbis would say when they invited someone to come and join their program and their training school. A rabbi is a religious leader, and in Jewish culture at that time, it was the highest of high honors to be a rabbi. It was like the dream job. Little boys in Israel didn't grow up wanting to be an All Black or famous or anything like that. They grew up wanting to be good enough to be a rabbi. And all Jewish boys, just the boys, started in this education system with the goal of becoming a rabbi. To become a disciple was a lifelong journey of learning and study. Jewish boys, by the time they were 11, any 11-year-olds in the room, had memorized the first five books of the Bible. Memorized. And if they passed that test, they would go to the next level of becoming a disciple. They weren't a disciple yet, but they were on the way to becoming one. And they pointed their life and their time and their energy and their learning into that goal. And if they failed the test, they were just sent home and they just had to get a day job, or they learned the family business. By the time they were 17, was sort of the next benchmark moment, They had memorized not only the first 5 books of the Bible, they had memorized the next 34 books. In other words, the entire Old Testament. I mean, that's hardcore. Wow. And if they failed that, again, they were sent home to learn the family business. But if they had done that, if they had memorized the 34 books of the Old Testament and passed the test, they would then approach their rabbi of choice and they would apply to be chosen. They would tell him of their accomplishments and their skills and their test scores and their big brains and their big habits and their big commitment. And the rabbi would say these scripted, coded words: "Come, follow me." They were then counted as a disciple. You were called, you're hired, you got the job, you met the grade. And then the disciples would go where their rabbi went. You would sleep where your rabbi slept, you would eat what they ate, and you would share their passions and their beliefs, and you would learn from the idea as you be with your rabbi, you become like your rabbi, and then you go and do what your rabbi did. So you can see how wild it is when Jesus rocked up to Peter and Andrew and Matthew and James and John, fishermen, tax collectors, working for their dads. None of them were professional disciples. None of them were learning from a rabbi. In other words, all of them had failed the test at some point and gone home and joined the family business. Jesus called them from their way of life to a new way of life. They left their nets, their tables, and they followed Jesus. They reorientated their whole being around being a disciple. They were to follow him, to be with him, to become like him, and to do the things he did. And while today we can't physically follow Jesus like the disciples did, he's not asking us to book a one-way trip to Bethlehem. We can't go camping with Jesus, thank goodness. As a non-camper, we can't walk around town with him and eat with him and things like that, but we can experience in a supernatural, spiritual way a connection and a relationship with God. And that invitation is still valid, and the invitation is still the same: to come follow me. Come and be my disciple. Come and be with me. Come become like me. Come and do the things I did. And this is the mission for every single Christian. Winding the clock back again, when a disciple in the official job title of disciple had served his rabbi and learned from his rabbi and been with his rabbi and become like his rabbi, it was now time to do the things his rabbi did. He had passed all his tests, learned enough. The rabbi again would use a formal statement, coded, scripted language, to take it to the next level. He was ready to become a rabbi. And the rabbi would say, and look, when I first heard this, I was just like, oh my goodness, I have to tell everyone about this. This is like the coolest thing in the Bible. Like everything's really cool in the Bible, but this is so cool. So I hope that you hear my heart. This is so cool. The rabbi would say to his disciples, so he's like saying, you're now ready to become a rabbi. This is like the dream job. You're ready to do it. You've passed the test. You're good enough. He would say to his disciple, go and make disciples. I mean, that's exciting. You pass the test, you memorize all the scriptures, you get called to be a disciple, you pass more tests, and like you're with your rabbi, you're becoming like your rabbi, and now you can be a rabbi. You can go and make disciples. Because again, see how amazing it is that Jesus rocks up to Andrew and Peter and Matthew, who had failed the test, and he calls them to come follow me, and he says, come be with me, come become like me, and then go and make disciples. He flips the whole system on his head. And when he calls each one of us to come follow him, he then says to us, go and make disciples. This is our mission. This is our call. We're called to be disciples who make disciples. We are the chosen ones. I mean, it's a crazy plan. This is the most important mission on earth. And God says, tag, you're it. Represent me. But then it also makes complete sense. You know, we've seen the rise of the influencer online, and someone tries a product and then they make a video about it and they're like, you should try this. This is like, go to this great cafe, or try this great mascara, or like, use this moisturizer and you're going to look 25 years younger in 4 minutes. And, they just make a TikTok and boom, like a product will just sell out, and it's just crazy. God is calling each one of us to be influencers and to make him go viral. He invites us to try the product, his amazing grace, his eternal salvation, a relationship with the creator of the universe. I mean, that's wild. And then to influence those around us to try it. Jesus doesn't need PR people, but he set it up so that we can join him on mission to help people see that Jesus is real. And every single one of us that believe in Jesus, that can put our 2 fingers like this and get a pulse, are called to know God and make him known in our everyday lives, in our world, in our circle of influence. In Matthew 28:19, known as the Great Commission, the Great Mission, Jesus says to all of us, go into the world and make disciples. Our personal call is the world in which we will be a disciple who makes disciples. It is the unique, tailor-made, designed with you in mind purpose that God has for each one of us. And it gives us a context and people and places to be. It gives us things to create and things to do in order with our time and energy and gifts, all given by God on purpose with a purpose. Go into your world. Go into your spaces. Go into your 168 hours. Go into your lives, into your classes, into your groups, into your staff room, into your office, into your building site, into your world, and make disciples. Did you know that the first time the Bible says that someone is filled with the Holy Spirit and anointed for a task, it wasn't for a prophet, it wasn't for a priest, it wasn't for a pastor. It was for a tradie, a craftsman, a builder. And he was filled with the Holy Spirit and empowered to create and build and lead a team of Holy Spirit-filled creators and architects and tradies to build the tabernacle of God. Yes, there are calls to be prophets and preachers and pastors, but equally important are the calls to be nurses, plumbers. We love plumbers at our house. Builders, architects, engineers, salespeople, mechanics, landscapers, rock climbing instructors, supermarket workers, accountants, and all the things in between. Because God does not live in the 4 walls of this building. And God does not limit his calling and his mission to this place. The whole world is filled with mission, potential, and possibility. A better way to look at calling is to think about, what are you created to do? What are you hardwired by God to do? And calling begins with realizing that you are hardwired and created by God on purpose. It's not something you create, but it's something you receive from your Creator. It's not something you make up, but it's something you discover as you be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do the things Jesus did. In Genesis 1, God introduces the concept of calling and work. In Genesis 1:27, it says, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And God said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. God created Adam and Eve on purpose, with a purpose. In his image, he created them. And then he sent them on mission to be fruitful and to increase, to rule over the land and to rule over the creatures. And these can be familiar words. We hear them often. It's probably in our kids' Bible in the beginning, go forth, multiply, yada, yada, yada. And you think, yeah, that worked in the garden, when it's just a garden and there's like zoology and like farming and biology. And here we've got suburbs and we've got malls and medical centres and schools and 7 billion more people. We've left the garden and we're in the city now. But the mission is still the same. His kingdom, as in heaven, here on earth. To look after this world that we have been given. To look after the people around us. To know God and make him known. And that can look like being an IT specialist, being a doctor, being a sparky, selling shoes and jeans. It can look like building roads, counselling, managing an office, being a sports coach, being a stay-at-home parent. When you see your work and your calling as a Genesis 1 mission from the Creator to rule and to subdue and be fruitful and multiply, it gives you a different lens. When you see your work and calling as an extension of God's work to you as God's work through you, that's a game changer. Being the most excellent plumber, that's fulfilling the call. Being the most awesome hairdresser, that's fulfilling the call. Being the most amazing manufacturer, that's fulfilling the call. Being the most amazing stay-at-home mum, that is fulfilling the call. Now, I can hear some gears turning. And some of us here might be thinking, I hate my job. I don't feel like I am being fruitful and ruling the earth. I feel unsatisfied and unfulfilled, and I don't know what my calling is, and if this is it, stop the bus, I want off right now. So how do we find out what our unique, personal, tailor-made, designed calling is? Discovering your calling is a journey, and sometimes it takes a whole lifetime. Some of us are lucky to finish school and know what we want to be when we grow up right away. Some of us will try something, and then we'll go, oh, yeah, maybe not, and we'll try something else. Or we'll go up the ladder, or we'll add another ingredient in skill set, and we'll just make some changes and some edits. Calling is often a process of unfolding revelation. There are very rare individuals that maybe wake up when they're 8 and they're like, I know what I want to be. When I was 8, I wanted to be a brain surgeon and Madonna. Till I realized that involved blood and cutting people up and singing in public. So no, to either of them, that dream was dead. Think about Joseph. In Genesis 37, Joseph, who is 17 years old, has a dream about his brothers and his family bowing down to him. He was dreaming of big things. He was dreaming of like leadership and, big dreams. His dream was a literal dream, but notice in his dream, he did not dream of being sold into slavery. He did not dream of being thrown into prison. He did not dream of becoming a politician and being in Pharaoh's house. He didn't see prison. He didn't see the pit. He didn't see Potiphar's house. But the calling unfolded. And as he was faithful in each position that he found himself in, God unfolded the next step. Our calling unfolds as we continue to be faithful to what God says here and now, faithful in the season that God has us in. I'm blessed to be the youth pastor here, and it was an unfolding, surprising revelation that I became the youth pastor. Some of you know this story that I was meant to fill in for like a couple of months while they found a real youth pastor. 9 years later, I'm still here. And I'm so thankful. I have the best job in the world, and I love it. I wake up every day thinking about youth and dreaming about youth in my sleep too. Yeah, and thinking of all the fun things, and just so excited to see young people discover that God is real. I am so blessed, but it was an unfolding revelation. When I worked in a concrete company in their customer service, I was not passionate about bricks or concrete or pavers at all, but I was passionate about people. I'm passionate about helping people find the solution to their problem. And that was what I did. And I learned lots on that job. So be faithful in the job you have now. And maybe if you're dissatisfied, maybe that's a sign to explore a new chapter. It's okay to have different chapters and seasons. Talk about it with the right people. Think about what you're good at. Think about what do you love. Think about what you are wired to do. Do personality tests. Go see a career coach. Ask God, who created you, what am I meant to be? Find the purpose in what's been put in front of you. Now, I want to give you some practicals, because I always love giving some practicals around our topic on how we can be on mission in our world. The first is to be intentional. We're not just doing a day job. Whatever your week looks like, it's not just a day job. You are in the mission business, uniquely called and sent and positioned in your world to make a difference and to be someone that does the things Jesus did. And when we realize that is part of our life and part of our world, and that God doesn't have like sacred and meaningful times and then looks at everything else as like, oh, whatever. When we see that God looks at all of it and says, I'm with you, I've gone before you, and I'm with you in that space, our mind shifts to help us to be more intentional in our behavior and our connections. Pray on your way to work. God, who am I meant to have a conversation with today? Who can I sit with in the staff room? God, help me to be the most excellent whatever I am. Help me to have wisdom. Help me to have your peace and your presence and your purpose in what I do. And help me to see the people around me not as projects and not just as colleagues, but as people you love and died for. And that me being here is part of that rescue mission. The second thing we should do is to be real. I think sometimes we hold back from being on mission and talking to people in our workplaces about God because we're worried we're going to stuff it up. What if we say the wrong thing? What if someone asks me a really hard question and I don't know the answer? What if something really human happens at work and now they're going to judge me because you're a bad Christian, or wow, you've got a bad God, and all of those things. And Jesus didn't pick perfect people. He didn't pick perfect people in the first place, and he doesn't call perfect people now. None of us have it all together. We're all real people with real problems and real lives. And that is the beauty of being a representative of Jesus. Because everybody on this planet is a real person with real problems and real lives, and we have a real God with real answers. The third thing is to be the answer to someone's prayer. My parents live in the South Island, and quite a number of years ago, my dad was really sick. And one day he just casually dropped into conversation at a meeting where he'd been doing his job that he was unwell. And the people that he was meeting with said, "Can I pray for you?" And he rang in and he was just talking to me about it. He said, prayed for me today. And I was like, prayed for you today? Wow. And I'd been praying for my dad and praying that, somewhere in the South Island, in my dad's town, that somebody would reach out and tell him about God and pray for him, and that he would have a God encounter. And somebody stepped up to the plate. Somebody right now is praying for your office manager. Somebody right now is praying for the kid that you sit next to in math class. Someone's praying for your boss, praying for your intern. They're praying because it's somebody's mother, someone's father, someone's brother, someone's sister, someone's friend. Right now, there are people praying for the people you work with. Be the answer to someone's prayer. Be the person on the spot that is going to step up and share that God is real. In Romans 10:14, it says, "How can they then call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one if they have not heard? And how can they hear without hearing someone preach to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent?" We are sent. We are called to share with them. We are called to help them hear. And we are the ones to help them believe. Here's something I heard this week that was really challenging. 2 out of every 5 teens in the US claim no religion. And they're sometimes now referred to as the nuns. They have none religion. And that includes people that classify themselves as atheists and agnostics. They're the nuns. But 2 out of 3 of the nuns would consider coming to church if somebody invited them. God has positioned you in your world on purpose. And sometimes we just need to be bold and be brave and be kind and step out and see God step in. The fourth thing we do is to be like Jesus. People aren't interested sometimes in how much we know. And in this post-modern world, truth is really relative. I've got my truth, you've got your truth. It's follow your truth. But Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Show people Jesus. And show people Jesus with your life. Show them how Jesus would love them. Show justice like Jesus would. Stand up for people like Jesus would. Care for people. Think about how would Jesus speak to your workmates and classmates? And how would Jesus speak about them when they're not in the room? Show them a real God with real answers, who has real peace. Be like Jesus.